All right, let's take a look at one more short little chorale example to get our secondary dominant stuff all back going. I hope we're feeling good about this. Hope we're feeling comfortable. Again, you should have taken a look at this one already. This is, I think, the most complicated one out of the three that we're looking at here as an example. So hopefully this one didn't give you too much trouble, but it's Ermuntre dich, schwacher Geist, or schwacher, maybe schwacher. That's kind of fun to say. This one, it's only one of the examples here that's in a minor key, which only adds to the schwacherness of it. Do with that what you will. Here's how this one sounds. Right, so some real crunchy, beautiful stuff in there. All right, so we're in what key? We're in E minor here, which is always exciting. And as we get out of the gate here, we're on one chord, right? Nothing too big there. What happens here? There's actually a couple ways to analyze this. What does that sound like to you? What's that bass motion sound like? Right? It's kind of passing. And so we could analyze this either with some passing tone type stuff or as a passing chord. We're clearly going between 1 and 1, let me just go back, 1 and 1, 6 here. And so if we look at this, we hear that passing motion, right? And we could actually consider this a passing 4-3 chord. 4-3 is the 7th chord relative, or whatever, of what? Of 6-4 chords. So this is like a passing 6-4. If the alto voice, or sorry, the tenor voice here wasn't singing this A, it would just be a 6-4 chord, right? If it was just B, D sharp, F sharp, just be a passing 6-4. But we've got the 7th, so it's a passing 4-3 chord. These are really, really cool, really unique. There's two things that I want to say about this motion here. Number one, this is a good example of where you want to not forget about the soprano, right? Even though they're not singing a new note here, they're still singing B. So that B is still part of this chord. So you don't want to ignore that. You may have, when you analyzed this, it would have been very understandable if you thought this was a D sharp chord, right? D sharp, F sharp, A, made it like a 7-6 type thing. 7-6 and 5-4-3 are really closely related, but there is a definite distinct sound when you hear having B on top. It sounds like a dominant 7th chord, as opposed to like a diminished sound, like if it did this. Hear how that's different? That diminished sound as opposed to the dominant sound, dominant 7th sound. The other thing to say about this is that we've got A in the tenor voice here, which is the 7th of this chord, and you may notice it's not resolving downwards, which we know is a cardinal sin, but it's just going with the line here. It's going with the line, and we'll see some more of this and some more funkiness with the 7th here in a second. Here's our 1-6 chord, got more passing motion already. So the tenor part, we can see whether it's moving through a 7th or a passing tone, just going up, 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 which is pretty cool. G sharp should jump up at us as a red flag here when we get to this chord. Where does G sharp want to lead? G sharp wants to lead to A, right? Which it does. And so that would make this, what's A in the key of E minor? A is 4. So this would be some kind of something of 4. What's the root of this chord? E, G sharp, B, D. So it's an E chord. So it's E is 5 of A. So that's 5 of 4. And we would even call this a 5, 6, 5. 5, 6, 5 of 4. Because that's where it's leading. This is another one of those great chords. We saw this in the Christus derust mein Leben, I think it was, at the first one, the one in F, where we had an F, A, C, E flat chord altering the tonic chord of the key. Here we're in E minor, and we've got this awesome E dominant 7th, E major, right? That's super common to adjust the tonic chord to lead to 4. The thing to point out here is that, again, we've got some funky seventh resolution. D is the seventh of this chord. And so you might be saying, well, I thought that D was the seventh, was supposed to resolve downwards, but it goes upwards to E here. But what I want you to know is, look, it does eventually resolve downwards to C. D to C. That's our seventh resolution. So the question is, why is the E there? It says here, I wrote here that it's for rhythm, but for what rhythm? What purpose is the E there? Look, we've got this beautiful line in the tenor that just moves up, 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 right? And then look what happens. The altos take over that motion, right? So if we stuck to the pure rules here and got rid of this because the seventh needs to resolve down, there would be this unnecessary stop there, right? If we just listen to that. Right? I know I exaggerated, but the musical motion doesn't want that pause there. On that measure, it wants to keep going. It wants, right, that motion to go up so that here we start to pause. We start to slow down as we get to the cadence. So it's just one of these little subtle things. It does resolve down to sort of, it fulfills another musical goal as it's going. So we get to 4, again, more passing stuff up in the upper voice there. And what in the world do we get here? This is kind of exciting, right? We got A sharp, C sharp, G, and E. That's just an awesome chord. So again, how can we figure out where this is going? Well, we want to look for leading tone motion, right? So our 2 funky notes are C sharp and A sharp. Is C sharp doing any leading tone motion? What's C sharp the leading tone of? It's the leading tone of D, and there's no D in this chord, right? So that C sharp isn't doing a leading tone thing. A sharp, though, what is the leading tone of what? A sharp is the leading tone of B, and wouldn't you know it, there it goes. A sharp is resolving to B, and B in the key of E is 5. So we know this is a something of 5 chord. And as we look at it, we could call this a 5-6-5 of 5. We've got this. There's actually a couple ways to analyze this, but this little G here, I'm calling it an upper neighbor tone. I'm saying F sharp is in the chord. So we've got F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E, right? 5 of 5. Now, here's the question. It's easy to tell that this is a secondary dominant chord because A sharp is the leading tone, but that leaves us with the question, why is C also being made sharp? If it's not the leading tone, what's its deal? Why is it also getting some special respelling? Well, we're pointing to B here, right? C is natural in E minor, but we're not pointing to E minor here. This is a 5 of 5. It's a 5 of B, right? And in the key of B, whether it's major or minor, there is a C sharp, right? So remember, to be the 5 of B, great poetry, right? To sound and be spelled like it belongs in the key of B, it needs to use the notes of B, because the chord F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E is the 5 chord in the key of B major or B minor. The chord that might be spelled F sharp, A sharp, C natural, E is not, that chord doesn't belong in the key of B, even though A sharp is the leading tone. So just something to keep in mind. You want to make sure your spelling lines up with where it's pointing to, right? Spelling lines up with where it's pointing to. Then we've got this sort of exciting ending here. Let's think about this ending. We know where it's ending all the way, right? But we said this was going to be, and if we look here, got some passing type motion-ish. If we look here, E, G, B, that doesn't look like a B chord. That looks like a 1 chord. But look, it goes to a B chord. So what is this? What happens when we have bass motion like that? That becomes a 5 chord, right? So we got sort of funky mystery chord that becomes a 5 chord. And we know that this was pointing to a 5 chord. What do you think that is? Well, of course, it's the love of my life, the cadential 6/4, right? So even though we know that this isn't the type of 5 chord that we were really expecting to follow a secondary dominant, that's the strength of the leading tone motion, is that even when this chord has a what are these stupid things called? Even when it has a backwards suspension, as I sometimes call them. I don't even remember what that stands for, I'll be honest. Even when it has some funky non-harmonic tone stuff, and even when the inversion seems off, it still fulfills that leading tone motion, getting us to the cadential 6/4 to end it. So there you go. Like I said, that one's by far the most complicated, but if we follow our leading tones and if we sort of keep in mind these unique functions, we'll be able to figure it out. Cool. So that's our first step into reviewing secondary dominants.